Welcome to another Nantucket edition of Your Creative Midlife. I'm Betsy Bush. What does Nantucket mean to you? If you look at some recent novels, Nantucket seems to be a place where life can change in the course of a summer, not only for young people, but also for those in midlife. For those parents facing the prospect of an empty nest or a change in a relationship, Nantucket seems a symbol of fresh starts and freedom. And for those well into retirement, Nantucket novels can show that contentment and love can come at any age. My guest today is author Nancy Thayer. She's published 35 novels, most of them set on Nantucket. She's a long-time, year-round resident, and I'm so grateful she's here today. Thank you, Nancy, for being here.
Thank you, Betsy.
I'm interested that so many of your stories, Nantucket is a place that can change people or gives people an opportunity to reset. Can you tell me what that's about?
First of all, I have to say personally, Nantucket changed my life when I came about 41 years ago to visit one of my good friends who had just moved here. And she introduced me to Charlie. And we've now been married for 40 years.
Wow.
So at that point, I was like, this is good change. And I've seen so many lives changed because people come to Nantucket. When you come to Nantucket, you either are going to work for the summer or you're coming because you want to be happy. You want to be on the beach. You want to go to the Brotherhood and drink with friends. You don't come here because you're going into the hospital or because you have to go to a job. You come here because it's an unusual, beautiful, strange place where magic happens, really.
I have to agree that when I'm here, like time falls away. I'm always like, what day is it again? And the atmosphere seems to be different. There's something different about the light, the air. There is something different about Nantucket. What do your characters find here as far as, a chance to reset and renew? The mom with the kids comes here and finally she can relax because the kids can go off and they have their own friends and their own lives, really. Mm-hmm. And that gives some people a chance to say, oh, let me think about the rest of my life or how I want things to proceed from here.
The book I published last year is called The Summer We Started Over. And it's about a family who are living in Williamstown, Massachusetts. Happy life, but someone leaves, and then someone dies, and that leaves a father and his two grown daughters, and they move to Nantucket to start over. And it really provides such a different life here. You really know you're not on the mainland. You know it's going to take the mail a little longer to get here. You may not get off the island because of the gale force winds. And there aren't that many people here. The buildings are so odd. I think there are no 3-story buildings. Maybe the hospital is. But it's like walking into a magic place. And people are nice here. They smile. They're welcoming. They ride their bikes. They bring their children. And it's transforming.
You have a nice way of presenting the interior life of women who are facing maybe empty nests in the near future, a change in a relationship. Maybe the marriage isn't going so well. Maybe someone new appears on the horizon and, what do I do? Or also an understanding that things are the old life I had where I was a hands-on mom. That might not be what my future life looks like as the kids get older and move away. What is it about this time of life for so many women who really kind of suffer, I would say, in an unseen way, but you bring it out?
I think I do, but I don't just keep it for the women, say, between 40 and 60. One of my novels is about a grandmother who is 70, and her granddaughter comes to stay with her. And through her granddaughter, she realizes that there's something she can do, which is to start a group to help a children's camp for the children of the people who work here in the summer. So it's sort of a combination of being here. Eleanor, has a beautiful house on the cliff. She sits in the morning and watches the ocean. She's ensconced. And she's aware that every day everything changes. The ocean changes. The gulls fly differently. The wind is different. And she has had loss, but she loves her granddaughter. And her granddaughter, who has just graduated from college, has just broken up with the guy she was engaged to because she just knew it wasn't right. And she comes to start over and lives with her grandmother. And both women start over.
I think it's really inspiring to see that there are chances to reevaluate and start, not only on Nantucket. Do you think women who are reading your books are thinking, oh, maybe I should look at my own life and see what can I do differently? What new thing can I start?
I published my first book 45 years ago.
Wow.
In 1980, and it was called Stepping. And it was about being a stepmother because I was married and I was a stepmother. And it was incredibly successful because in 1980, people didn't talk about divorce or stepchildren or step-parents. It was all kind of like, ooh, under the counter sort of. And I wrote about it, and I actually said that the character Zelda loves her children, her own children. They're little, but sometimes she gets so mad at them. Well, she doesn't hit them, she doesn't beat them, she's just angry. And I got so many letters. This is before the internet. This is before all the wonderful technology we have now. Mm-hmm. And people wrote to me and said, I get mad at my children too. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you have one stepdaughter you love and the other one you kind of don't love, because let me tell you about my stepson. I hate him. And I got so much mail about this. And then after a while, Phil Donahue came on, and then Oprah, and then women were free to say, this is how I feel, this is who I love, these are days that are really hard. And I have a master's degree in English literature, which I got from the University of Missouri at Kansas City, a place I love, and I loved my professors, but I never had to read a book written by a woman.
Wow.
I didn't have to read Virginia Woolf. I didn't have to read Willa Cather, Emily Dickinson. And I always knew I wanted to write, but I thought, I'm going to write about an ordinary woman. I'm going to write about the lives of ordinary women, because there's so much drama, there's so much ecstasy, there's so much sorrow, there's so much hard work.
Yeah. I'm kind of struck by that, especially I think you're maybe, well, I know you're maybe half a generation older than me. I'll just put that out there. I had lots of friends who had step parents, and it was a very difficult relationship.
More and more there is. I like generational novels. I wrote a book called Summer House, which was...
Oh, I've read that.
Yes. It was a family gathering at a big house that a grandmother owned, and the grandmother had been married and her husband died, but the grandfather had been in World War II. And I used the letters my father wrote to my mother when he was in World War II.
Wow.
And they are wonderful and loving. And in Summer House, there are a lot of different issues. And she has a son who's an alcoholic. And she has a daughter-in-law whose husband is probably betraying his wife. And there's just a very small scene in there where her grandson comes in with his husband, and they kiss Nona, and they talk, and they laugh. And it's my way of including all the new relationships that we now are comfortable with, that maybe we weren't comfortable with 30 or 40 years ago. And I like to just put that kind of a relationship in, just as I often put in something about rising seas on Nantucket, and just slip it in a little bit, because we're all concerned about these things. It's all part of our lives.
About 10 years ago, you wrote a series called The Hot Flash Club.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me that now these days, menopause seems to be having its moment where people are really talking about what it means to be going through menopause, and some women experience different symptoms that have been uncomfortable to talk about until now. And I'm fascinated that you were kind of onto this 10 years ago, or that you took this idea, this change of life, I'm putting that in air quotes, and turned it into a series of novels. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I do like to write about women in changing times, like step parenting, divorce, and so on. And this was more like 20 years ago when I wrote The Hot Flash Club.
Oh.
And I have so many friends my age who have wonderful senses of humor. We just laugh all the time about how weird it is to be a woman, because men's lives don't change, their physical bodies don't change as much as ours do. And when you hit, say, 45, then you can be perimenopausal, so you can be crazy. But then in your 50s, you're menopausal, and you are definitely crazy. And
We're laughing here. Right?
But I wrote The Hot Flash Club. I used all the things my friends said, which were funny, and that did very well. And my publisher wanted a second one, and then a third one, and then a fourth one. And I'm working on a fifth one because I just want to. I want to be, they're 4 women, and they're from all different walks of life. And I want to be with them again, and I'm going to take them on a cruise. It's going to be The Hot Flash Club Goes on a Cruise.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Were that series of books set on Nantucket, or was it set elsewhere?
They were set in Boston, But in the fourth one, the Nantucket Club chills out. They all come to Nantucket. And they find so much about themselves being here. One of my characters from the very beginning was an African American, and she is part of the group, and there was this fabulous woman named Betty Spriggs. I don't know if you ever knew her, but she lived here she's mentioned, she and Frank are mentioned in many places. She was beautiful and tall, and she was on the board of the library, too. And when she would come in with all her turquoise on, her jewelry, we were all like, oh, Betty has her war medals on, and we better be ready for a discussion. But in this book, I have my character discover the African-American meeting house, and there's the connection that she has from the big city to this very small island where there was a woman named Florence Higginbottom who came to Nantucket around 1900, made a whole lot of money cleaning houses, bought her own house, and that's another sign of a woman in her 50s who is changing her life.
What a great story. You know, I'm astonished that you have so much output. How do you manage that? I know a lot of people would love to know what your process is. Do you write for an hour in the morning? Do you write over a period of time, or do you shut the door and shut yourself in a room and get it all done in 6 weeks? What is your process? What is your writing process?
My process is I work from about 8 in the morning until 1, and I don't answer the phone. I don't go out to lunch. I write, and everyone in my family wants me to do that because otherwise I'm cranky. So it's something I've always written all my life. When we bought our house, we had 2 kids at home who eventually grew up. So Charlie had a half-moon window put in our attic, and it overlooks the harbor. We're on Orange Street. So I've got this beautiful view of the harbor. I'm in this really old house that was built in 1840. I love going up there. I've gone up there or in one room or the other of the house for 40 years every morning, and I do it on Sundays too.
That's incredible dedication, and it sounds to me like I'm wondering if you think someone who in midlife is like, oh, I want to write a novel, but doesn't have that discipline or that training of writing for 4 hours every day or 5 hours every day. Do you think it's possible to get into that writing life, that writing rhythm?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I hope that women and men do this because our culture is changing so rapidly because of technology. We really need our mothers, our grandmothers, our brothers, our sisters to write memoirs because we want to know what it's like. And sometimes a memoir will become a novel, or sometimes someone will say, I think I want to write a novel now that I've done this. For some people, it helps to say, I'm going to shut myself in a room for 2 hours, and even if I don't write, I'm going to stay in there and look at the computer. And sometimes it helps for people to walk. And poets, not Renaissance, romantic poets like Wordsworth and Keats and so on, they would walk, and as they walked, they would compose poetry. So for a lot of people, walking helps them think. But no, I think it's possible. I know people who are publishing books at 65, their first novels. Yeah, it's possible.
Wow. Do you think, how do you get into, say, the publishing world? Is that a whole other thing? Or do people who write a novel, their first novel at 65, just something, a self-published sort of thing?
Well, again, technology has made so much possible.
Oh, yes.
When I started, it was like you have to send your book to an agent, and the agent will show it around. That is still the best way to do it, if you can get an agent to read your book. But there's an author named Lisa Genova who has a PhD from Harvard in neurophysiology, and she wrote a book about 10 years ago, called Still Alice. And it's about a woman with early onset Alzheimer's. And it was made into a movie starring Julianne Moore, and she won the Oscar for playing Alice. So Lisa was living on the Cape. She wrote Still Alice, couldn't get anybody to buy it. And so she just put it online. And people who wanted to read about Alzheimer's were coming to it. And then publishers started saying, hey, look at this. She's got all these people who are reading her book. And since then, she's published books. There's something called Substack now.
Yes.
And I read a lot of the columns. I haven't put anything on there because I have a blog on my website, and that's where I put things. But that provides an opportunity to put things out there and see who reacts.
Do you find that you need to do a lot of social media work? You have a Facebook group and you have a blog, and it's not easy for a lot of people to get that going. But do you feel that that's necessary as an author, a working author today, to have that social media presence?
I think these days, new authors are doing something wonderful, which is they're touring. They're going to Indiana and Seattle and Miami, and they're meeting groups, book club groups. I've done a lot of this, but now that I'm older, I just want to stay on Nantucket.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, and I've got Facebook and Instagram and Threads and Pinterest, and I have so much fun, and I have so many lovely, wonderful people that I feel like I know personally, even though I haven't met them. I think it's such a gift to have this technology. So I post every day. I have a personal assistant, Christina Higgins, who will often, if I say, look, I'm going to be busy Tuesday, she'll put up a cute post. She keeps a calendar of what every day is special for. And, for example, a few days ago, it was National Dog Day. Oh. So we had a dog. My daughter has a dog, and so on. I find it, I just love it. I just love the new technology. I don't love all the technology with producing a novel. I find some of the technology invasive. I am not a fan of AI. And you might have seen that Charles Graeber took them on for basically pirating one of his works.
Yeah, he's another Nantucket writer.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Does that worry you that someone could put in certain prompts and, produce a Nancy Thayer novel for me set on Nantucket with these characters? Is that something that concerns you?
Not really, but I know it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have a publishing house. I'm with Random House, and there are a lot of people there who are much better at worrying about that than I am.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm curious because I know there are a lot of writers here on Nantucket. Is there like a writers community? Do people get together? Do you see each other socially? Is there a place where people hang out? Anything like that?
There isn't a writing club that gets together. For example, Ellen, who is like the Taylor Swift of the United States literature now.
Yes.
She's fabulous, and I've seen her at parties. We've gotten together just really early on in her career, but she's younger. I could be her mother, so we run with different crowds, and I love what she writes. And I see her at Mitchell's, and Mitchell's bookstore is just the golden touch for writers because they have wonderful events. Nat Philbrick, who wrote Into the Heart of the Sea, he lives about a block from me. And we've always, Nat, Melissa, and Charlie and I have always gotten together for years and years and years. We know Charles Graeber. We know Leslie Lindsley, who produces beautiful interior decorating books. But I think I know there is a new writing club because there's a woman named Julie Gerstenblatt who is maybe 40, and she's published a book called Daughters of Nantucket. It's a novel. And she has started a writer's workshop here in the spring.
So a question I asked Charlie, which was, is it a realistic idea for someone in midlife to say, I think I'd like to go to Nantucket. I'd like to move to Nantucket and see if I can make a go of it. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to do that?
I think it would be wonderful if everybody could do that, but we have such a housing problem that you would have to be a multimillionaire if you wanted to come buy a house and live here. I think if you have a way to rent a cottage, especially in the off-season, because it's so beautiful in the off-season, and it provides it's so atmospheric, that if you could come and rent for a few months, I think until we solve the housing problem, it's probably would be hard for anybody.
You have a lot of characters who come to Nantucket. Do you ever have a character who says, I got to get out of here. This is too claustrophobic. I need to meet new people. I need to leave Nantucket to start a new life or whatever. Have you ever had a character like that, or have you thought about one?
I've had, because I'm always writing about families, I've had a member of the family, say a son or a daughter, who've left the island, not necessarily because it's claustrophobic, but just because there aren't a lot of businesses here on the island. Mm-hmm. There aren't any big universities here. But no, I don't think I've had anybody who has to leave the island.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to say about all the things we've been talking about? I want to make sure I haven't left anything on the table.
I think the only thing I want to say is that I've been raving about technology, but books are still selling really, really well. When all of the computers came out, and then there's something called Libby where you can get a book electronically from the library, people were saying, all of the electric objects are going to steal people away from reading. And instead, more and more books have been selling. And I think that's because a book is intimate. It's just between you and the book, and you're in the world. And I think that is so important for people. We see it with children who just get entranced by a book. And I think it's kind of a mental health to read a book, to give yourself time. And it doesn't matter what kind of a book. You don't have to read Sartre or Sophocles or something. You can read just something light. But you've got this intimate place that's kind of with yourself. That's the time you get to be with yourself. So I guess I just want to say buy books, borrow books, support your library. Libraries are the best. And bookstores.
I absolutely agree. I've never liked reading a book on a screen. To me, I want to hold the book. I want to turn the pages. I want to see how much more I have to go. Look how much I've read.
Yeah.
And to put it aside and like that book represented a certain number of hours that I spent with it. It was you do give part of your life to a book, even when you read it, right? 3 days on the beach or however. I spent that with this book. And
and it gave you so many other worlds.
Absolutely, right? There's nothing like visiting another planet with a book, right? Another time, another place, having that one-on-one with the author. That's great. Nancy Thayer, I've so enjoyed this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being with me today. I really, and with my listeners, this has really been a joy. I appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you, Betsy. I've enjoyed it too. We could talk for a long time, I think.
Absolutely. Thanks again. This has been really perfect. Thanks for listening to this Nantucket edition of Your Creative Midlife, a podcast for late-blooming artists, writers, musicians, any and all creatives. And if you like us, please tell your friends, subscribe, and please leave a 5-star review. And visit yourcreativemidlife.com to learn more about me and my guests. I'm Betsy Bush.